Well, hello, you good people.
Hello, everybody.
Friends. Lovers. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. Today is Sunday, September 10th, 2023, and we're glad you are here. What a weekend. What a great weekend. We're going to talk about what a great weekend it has been. But I also want to share some good stuff with you. Thank you for joining us. If you are watching this live, join us in the chat with your comments and your suggestions. We'll get to that. If you're listening after the fact, that is cool too. If you're watching on YouTube, please give us a like. Working on our social media scores. We're going to start spreading the word again, get more people to listen to this outstanding program. Outstanding because you are here. Today is Sunday, September 10th, 2023, the 253rd. Them days are getting too big. Those numbers are outrageous. The 253rd day of this, your best year yet. I mean, it's not 2020. We're not isolated. Some of us are still working from home. 2023, it's like a year of massive freedom and success and great weather if you're anywhere in southeast Michigan. Man, what a beautiful day. Christmas is in just 106 days. Halloween in 51 days, less than 2 months worth of days left. And on this date, September 10th, in 1897, the first drunk driving arrest.
Oh, not drunk history?
Not drunken history. We'll get there. The first drunk driving arrest, a 25-year-old London taxi driver named George Smith. I wonder if he just gave them that name. That sounds pretty anonymous. George Smith became the first person ever arrested for drunk driving after slamming his cab into a building. Smith later pleaded guilty and was fined 25 shillings.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's a lot. Now, did they have a drunk driving... Do we know if they had drunk driving as a law, like, against it? Or was this just 25 shillings to repair the property of the building?
Well, the story tells that it was a fine. He was actually arrested for drunken driving. Now, drunken and disorderliness had been a crime for a long time. I imagine they just applied that to driving. It was actually, in the United States, the first laws against operating a motor vehicle while under the influence went into effect in New York in 1910. So that would have been 13 years later. Incidentally, 20 shillings doesn't sound like much, right? 25 shillings. Mm-hmm. You know, back then there were 20 shillings in a pound. We don't have that in the States. We don't have a... Well, I take that back. That would be a nickel. 20 nickels in a dollar, right? So 20 shillings in a pound. 25 shillings then would have been, a pound 20. I'm saying 20 like 20 cents. A pound and 20 pence. But if you do the math, that was about, in today's dollars, 166 pounds. So, a little over $200 the fine for drunkenness in driving, which sounds like a lot of money, except if you're in the States, and maybe this is true in the UK too, drunken driving is a very, very, very expensive. It's not about $200. It's about the points on your record and what your insurance company does to your rates. Folks, do not drink and drive. Bad idea. So, yes, first drunken driving a little over 125 years ago. Today is Grandparents' Day. If you still have grandparents with, metaphysical existence, if you still have living grandparents, call them up. Give them some love. Today is Grandparents' Day, September 10th. We celebrate National Grandparents' Day on the first Sunday after Labor Day, which I think is great because Labor Day we all start digging in. Getting into whether it's the school year or your work year, summer is over. It's not really over until the equinox. But great day to remember. Wait, I should call my grandparents. Heck, I should call my parent. But yes, today is National Grandparents' Day, so.
Yeah, I didn't really have grandparents, but I had a grandmother who was quite a bit distant.
She was a bit of a duty.
Well, yeah, and before that though, she was partial to boys, so she would give my brother all sorts of money, and she might give me a gift, which is fine because I didn't have that gift to begin with. So
yes.
But I remember she would always
that kind of favoritism is unacceptable, but didn't used to be that unusual.
So but she would always send it, well, not always, but occasionally, some Christmases, she would actually send us a box of, if anybody knows, Swiss Colony or Hickory Farms, that kind of things. The little cheeses and the little summer sausage logs and the little Dobish torts.
Yeah,
and
petit fours in there.
Petit fours, yeah. So actually, she introduced me to my addiction to petit fours during the holidays.
When we were a kid, weren't those great? Those kind of gift packages?
Yes.
They would have 20, 25, 100 different things in there. And the funny thing was, if you've ordered from Swiss Colony as an adult or Hickory Farms or wherever you get your gift boxes, it's funny that everything was really tiny and most of it wasn't even that good.
No.
But it was so great. You had this feast. And when you were a kid, the quality wasn't as important as the excitement, the interest.
It was a sample pack of many different things that you didn't really have, access to when you were a kid. So, it was really adorable, and it's very grandma-ish.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to shout out to the chat because I always love the chat, and we got a conversation going on. We can keep talking about these charming things, but they're going back to the first drunk driver. And, Paulo Zeus reminds us, you run somebody over, your life is over. And he's absolutely right. You can live down the fines and the fees and maybe even getting your driver's license taken away. How do you get over the guilt?
Right.
When I was a young driver, I actually hit somebody on a bicycle.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she wasn't terribly injured. But, your immediate thought is, well, if it had been worse. But even as bad as it was, it's just the guilt of being responsible for something that was not her fault at all.
It's funny you should say that, because I actually hit a little girl on her bicycle. I was backing up from the driveway, not fast, but apparently she didn't see me or she didn't get out of the way fast enough. And I made her fall over. I didn't run her over or anything like that, but I stopped just in time. She just fell over on the sidewalk. But it was so mortifying.
We are such blaggards. My God, unacceptable. It's a wonder
she was
that
fine.
How did we ever drive cars without rear view cameras?
Right.
Hey, rear view mirrors don't show you what's behind your car unless it's far enough away. You can see it through the back window. Yeah. Yeah, fortunately, both of our cars... Actually, one of our cars didn't come with a rear-view camera, but I've added it on. Every car should have one of them damn things.
Right.
So, yes, thank you for that in the chat. Paulo Zeus, you're absolutely right. Equal to Reality says, well, I don't drink, and I have not driven in over 5 years. That's another solution, too. Don't drink and drive? How about don't drink or drive? I don't know. I could never give up my cars, but I know people who have downsized, here in the States down to one car. I don't know anybody intimately, but I know of a lot of people who don't have cars at all. And it makes sense if you live in the city or just if you're part of the Uber and Lyft culture. So yes, thank you guys. Jim Ashley says, I won't send anyone a Harry and David gift basket. If you don't know, Harry and David is another company that sends out these charming gift baskets. But as Jim points out, their food has almost no flavor. Well, Jim... Yeah.
I mean, except that they have, pears that are wrapped in gold foil. Very fancy pears.
Very fancy. They might not be as a pair you could go to the grocery store and get, but they're there. You don't have to go to the store and get them. Even at my very mature age, I still find great charm in gift baskets. But, yeah, the writer, the author, Jim Ashley, is absolutely right that gift baskets, the biggest complaint people have about them is you don't get much for your money. So they only make sense if you don't care about the cost. If it's price no object, I just want to send something charming, even though what they're going to get is only worth, a quarter of the $100 it cost or whatever the numbers shake out to be. So yes. Now, since we're getting kind of heavy, let me do this real quick. Talking about drunk driving and what if you kill somebody. It is World Suicide Prevention Day. Now, this is a serious topic. And the only thing I have to say about that is first of all, if you are somebody who has thought about self-harm, reach out. And if you're there, you don't feel like there's anybody to reach out to. Reach out anyway to anybody. There are hotlines and phone numbers to call to, but friends online. I know people who have laid themselves bare online. They've been willing to do that, and it's generally worked out well for them. I know we think, well, if I tell people, I'm depressed, I'm finding it hard to find a reason to go on, that'll turn them off. Nobody wants to hear that online. I'm telling you, reach out. Do reach out. And if you're dealing with somebody who's in that position, well, Amy, we talked about grief before. Grief is difficult. It is hard to console a grieving person because it's hard to know the right thing to say. It's hard to know the right thing to do.
Really, I mean, that my number one rule for helping a grieving person is to be an ear for them, to be a springboard, to listen to them, to active listening, repeating back sometimes what they say, and just to be there for them to listen, to kind of bear witness.
And don't necessarily ask them, what can I do, as if you're going to fix it for them, because in a way it can't be fixed. Just be there for them, and take the clues from them, what they need. Yeah,
and also, I mean, this goes for the whole case of anybody who is in distress, whether that's somebody who's going through a terrible medical condition or grieving or however. Try not, I mean, the one thing to avoid saying is, hey, what can I do to help you? No. What you do say is, hey, I'm coming over next Wednesday with some food.
That's true.
Just
that's a great point.
Make a statement. Don't ask a question in terms of helping them. If you can help them, or, don't, because they won't know. They're not there to delegate, to people to have them come over next Wednesday with food.
That's a great point. If you ask, what can I do? I'm okay, or you don't need to do anything. No, just do it.
Just do it.
Just
show up.
It's funny. One of the things I don't like about Mel Brooks movies is the goofy Jewish humor. I love Jewish people, but the constant references to traditions that make no sense to me. But I was listening to a Barry Weiss podcast about grief recently, and the person, her guest, was a writer. He wasn't especially religious, but he was in Jewish culturally. And they were talking about Shabbat, about when somebody in a Jewish family dies, the relatives, they come over and they sit with the grieving people. And it's not an option. It's not that anybody asks for it. And they bring them food, and they make it so they don't have to do anything, and they are just there for them. So on World Suicide Prevention Day, A, if you're feeling that at all, reach out. And B, if you're dealing with somebody in that situation, being there is the most important thing. And the other thing I would say is there's no one right answer. So don't feel guilty if you don't know the right thing to do or the right thing to say. And God forbid if that ever happens in your life and you're dealing with the guilt from that. Nobody can know the right thing to do, the right thing to say. It's very easy to say, I should have done X, Y, and Z. Do the best you can, but don't carry the burden from that. And that's all I want to say about that. Apollo Zeus reminds us of the concept of psychological visibility. The way I put that is when you're with people, be with them. The obvious example is don't stare at your cell phone, but look them in the eye. With some people, just being willing to put your hand on their shoulder every now and then, a physical touch. But it depends on the person. You use your own best judgment, but do the things.
Yes.
So, with that said, it's also Colin Firth's birthday. The actor Colin Firth. And he's always charming and interesting because his range is just outrageous. He ends up in a lot of comedies, Bridget Jones' Diary and Love Actually, but also in a lot of dramatic roles. I don't know, I still get a kick out of Kingsman. To me, Kingsman, The Secret Service, is like the British answer to, the Kill Bill kind of over-the-top action movies. I got a big kick out of that. They did a sequel that wasn't quite as good, but I got a kick out of Kingsman, The Secret Service. So for me, Colin Firth isn't about, I've griped about Love Actually. I won't say anything here, but if you're going to watch Colin Firth, watch The King's Speech.
Yes, King's Speech. Yeah, that's very good.
Watch Bridget Jones' Diary. He was in a recent remake or recent filming of Frances Hodgson Burnett's story, The Secret Garden, which is a favorite of mine, of ours, of several people in our circle. And that was good, the 2020 production. But lately I've been reading adult stories, novels by Frances Hodgson Burnett. So with the occasion of Colin Firth's birthday, if you like reading old literature, these are 100-year-old stories about the turn of the century. No, not the 1990s, but the 1890s. I just finished 2 stories. One is The Shuttle. These are long. These are novel-length stories. The Shuttle. And the other one is called Tembarom.
Yeah, I need to read those. That's been our friend Carrie has recommended those. And,
that's true. She has a whole website about Frances Hodgson Burnett. And she is a big fan, and I'm a fan as well. And it's interesting because when I read stories written by people who are very eloquent, I find myself wanting to speak in a more eloquent manner. Like I would naturally say, in a more eloquent way. And I know that's not really the way I want to express that. So reading good literature really makes me think. See, I would normally say better, but no, more exactly and more descriptively and more better. Yeah. When I read good writers, I talk more good. So I encourage it. So if you think of Frances Hodgson Burnett and you think, The Secret Garden or The Little Princess, yeah, children's stories are great. And as an adult, I like the children's stories. But the more adult stories, like Tembarom or The Shuttle, worth reading. I've got links in the show notes to the Librivox recordings. In fact, it's funny. I read The Shuttle, I read Tembarom, the first one that I read. And you can read, and they're out of copyright. They're over 100 years old, so you can find copies online. I like reading them on the iPad. It's very good for reading things like that on the internet. And you think, but I like audiobooks. Well, you can find them on the audiobook services. The ones we use, Audible, which, you pay every month. You get every credit every month, and they add up, and you use a credit to read the book. So basically, you're paying $15 to read a book or hear an audiobook. And I like that. I like being able to do the audiobook and have the text available. There are passages where you didn't quite understand everything that was said. Instead of saying, I'll figure it out later, you can actually read it. Cool. Then I went to, from Tembarom. That doesn't sound like it makes any sense. You have to see it written out. And there's a reason why the name of the book seems a little cryptic or unusual. And then I went to read The Shuttle, and I thought, I could listen to this on Librivox, the free audio recording online, or I could go to Audible, and the paid version will be better than... I should explain if you don't know. There's a website out there called Project Gutenberg. And what they do is they aggregate all of the literature and all of the texts that are out of copyright, that are freely available, and they're all on Project Gutenberg. Not everything, but there's an awful lot of stuff there. And some years after Project Gutenberg, when the internet went from being everything's text to more audio-video, the folks there or somebody associated with it got the idea, what about audiobooks? If this stuff's out of copyright, there should be audiobooks that are freely... But the thing is, an audiobook, you can't just scan a book. You've got to have somebody read the thing. Maybe 10 years from now, AI will read it better than humans would read it. Maybe today. And so what they did is they took volunteers, and you could volunteer to read, The Count of Monte Cristo, or some book that's well out of copyright, and the audio version would be up there in your voice for other people to listen to. The funny thing is, I go to read The Shuttle, which I think Carrie had recommended to me before. And I thought, okay, I'll listen to the audio version. Instead of this version on Librivox, which is sometimes very good readers and sometimes just your average Joe who's only so-so at it. And Frances Hodgson Burnett, who is both she's British-American, born in England, lived in America, went back to Britain. So her books contain a lot of dialect, accents that are written out as text. So you need a good reader for this stuff. I thought, well, the shuttle was pretty good. The version that I listened to, there's actually two, one with different readers in every chapter and one with the same reader for the whole book, which is pretty cool. I thought, well, the professional version will be better. So I go to Audible, and they have the book, The Shuttle by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And I purchase it, use up my credit that we paid, whatever, $15.99 a month for. And I'm listening to it, and it's sounding a lot like these Librivox recordings. In fact, the chapters, there's 50 chapters in this book, aren't matching up with the chapter numbers of the recording. So it would say, The Shuttle Chapter 1, and you would listen to it, and it wouldn't end at the end of Chapter 1. It would maybe go halfway through, and then the next chapter starts in the middle of what they're calling Chapter 2. Nothing's lining up. I think this is weird. So when I finished reading the book and finished listening to the book, I go to LibriVox, and it turns out Audible took the LibriVox recording, put it up on Audible, and charges a credit for it. In other words, I could have listened to it from LibriVox's website. It's kind of worth it. The Audible interface is better, and I don't mind paying for it if it's a little bit easier. But for you folks out there, if you're thinking, Robert posted the free version, but maybe the one online is better, it turns out the one online, at least by Audible, by Amazon, is the exact same one. Because these are out of copyright, and because of the licensing that Project Gutenberg and Librivox use, which is everything's freely available, they could do that. It's legal. It's kosher. And kind of surprising and a little bit disappointing. Not to get into that much, but Colin Firth did play Archibald Craven in the 2020 version of The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and I've been enjoying me some Frances Hodgson Burnett.
Good.
And that's all I've got to say.
Well, except that we're going to be talking about quotes. Do you have a quote?
Yes.
Good.
That's all I've got to say about this date, September 10th.
Yes. Yeah.
But yes, what have we been listening to? What have we been doing? Shameless self-promotion here. First and foremost, again, I did link to those two stories you can listen to or read online. Also, on Wednesday, no, I didn't do a show with James Valiant. We took the week off. Schedule conflict, other stuff going on. But Amy,
yeah,
you participated in the reality show on the Ayn Rand Center UK.
I did.
Let's see, the title of this show, they always do 3 topics, but the title is one of the 3. Abigail Disney, Too Rich to Sleep at Night?
Yeah.
Is this like a new Disney movie? Imagine.
Disney nightmare.
Walt Disney's new film, Too Rich to Sleep at Night.
No. Gosh, I'm trying to remember the entire context of that, but it's...
Well, if you want to think about it for a second, I've got to mention Greg Lewis is in the chat.
Yeah. Hey, Greg.
Talking about several things, but among other things, he mentioned my challahs so far have been kosher. Greg has been attending the last few Great Lakes Objectivists get-togethers, which is going to be relevant to what we're going to talk about today. But it's great that Greg is in the chat, and every time he has come, he has brought baked goods. He also brought farm products. He's got a garden,
nice.
Thank you. Apparently a very nice garden, very generous, and breads that. We had a ciabatta last night from the grocery store, and it was so sad sitting there next to his amazing cheese bread.
But yeah, he made an amazing cheese bread. I think he said he put a little bit of cayenne pepper in it. He maybe some herbs and some cheddar cheese, I believe. Quite delicious.
Although I still think that first one
that he made with the
that might have been
the apricot
of the 3 there have been so
and
far.
The almond,
apricot and almond.
Oh my gosh, it was the best.
It's all good. Greg, thanks again for that. Very, very kind. And what we talked about last night, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So yes, Abigail Disney. I got to admit, I was not on the show. Amy did this one with, it's a group of 4 or 5 folks talking about contemporary current event topics. I was watching, I thought you guys were really hard on Abigail Disney, who has been saying, I'm so rich and I find it hard to sleep at night. And I don't know, I think we should have a tax on all the rich people because there are so many poor people. That's how I heard it. Well, then later on I looked up the news stories.
Yeah.
it's not some young girl who feels kind of bad because she's super wealthy and there's hungry people.
Greta Thunberg of poverty.
No, this is an old crone, a harpy.
Well, she's a hardened activist.
She's like the Just Stop Oil people in that she goes out and handcuffs herself to stop events from happening. They had to like cut her out of this PVC pipe that she had permanently attached herself to. You would think a Disney heiress, an heir to the Disney fortune, even if she wanted to make these points, could be a little more dignified than that.
You would think.
You would think.
Yeah. So yeah, she was. I mean, if you're familiar with the character in Atlas Shrugged, we kind of compared her, not on the show, but later on when Rob and I were talking, she was a very good candidate for being the kind of person who would be like Ivy Starnes.
Ivy Starnes.
Of the Starnes family of the 21st Motor Company. And yeah, she was pretty rotten through and through, and it was not even so much that she says she just wanted to cut down the wealthy, and I don't know if it was because she herself is wealthy and she feels guilty about it, maybe, but she didn't want to actually she didn't really focus on saying, you know what? People are awesome. They're my favorite species. Human beings can be so amazing, and they can achieve so much in life. And you know what? Let's make sure everybody doesn't go hungry, and people have opportunities to be the best selves that they can possibly be. No. It was all about eliminating disvalue instead of pursuing value. You could see that from her approach, that she didn't have a value-oriented approach. She had a let's cut down these people whom I don't like, and make them pay a tax, like a global tax, which is crazy. It was, there was nothing good in what she was doing. That's
a good way to sum it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I didn't know anything about it, so when I was listening, I'm like, oh man, that's really harsh. But no, you're right. She is a total Ivy Starnes.
Yeah.
Look at her news stories. Read her own quotes in her own words. In fact, we'll get to quotes in a minute. Not by her, but...
No.
Yeah. So, interesting appearance. If any of you saw that on Wednesday, watched Amy, and Amy, you actually were very well spoken on it, but if you thought any of the guests were too hard on Abigail Disney, as I did at the time, yeah, take a look at some of the recent news stories about her. Total Ivy Starnes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. How could you? Yeah.
It was sad to see somebody so mired in malevolence.
Yeah. There are plenty of wealthy people, very rich people, who see that this gives them the opportunity to do great things for the less fortunate. And who don't then say, and I need to figure out how to force everybody else to do it.
Yeah.
That obviously would, in many cases, ruin the opportunity for anybody to do any good. You can admire what Bill Gates does in Africa, fighting malaria and saving lives. He is saving lives.
Yep.
But this Abigail Disney, what a crone.
Yeah,
the worst.
On the reality show last Wednesday when we were talking about it on the Ayn Rand Center UK channel, by the way, I mentioned kind of as a foil how Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Oprah have come together, and they have created a voluntary fund of like $10 million or something like that for the people of how do you call it, Luana, I believe, or the Maui area where,
in the Maui fires,
in the fires there, people who lost their homes, some people lost their lives, so families lost their other family members, so they actually reached out, and they're looking to rebuild that area, and they're looking to help other people rebuild that area. So in other words, it's not just charities are, if you approach charity in terms of avoiding disvalues or trying to snuff out the bad, evil, wealthy people, you need to question that seriously. If you approach charities in terms of values of, we have some shared values here. We love Maui. We love Hawaii. We love the people in Maui. We love, how they have in the past come together and done amazing things. How they have free association with each other, and everybody is quite happy with their own success and achievement, and then also sharing those successes with other people. That's it. That is the right approach.
There's a couple of great comments in the chat on the Facebook side of things. Jim Ashley says Walt Disney must be rolling in his grave with everything that people have done with and to his legacy. Absolutely, but Petya has a great comment and a great insight. She writes, very wealthy trust account babies are very different than original wealth creators. And that's absolutely right. It's one of the great points that comes up in these stories I've been reading by Frances Hodgson Burnett. And I'll be talking about that on Thursday, actually, on my next episode of Life on Earth.
Oh, great.
I don't know if you're going to join me for that one. We'll have to figure that one out.
We'll see.
But she refers to the first man. And what she means by the first man is the first creator in a line. And it can be whether it was, industrial wealth, capitalist wealth, or in some cases more the establishing of a line of royalty in England. But she refers to, yes, the first man. And the way that she writes about it is somewhat poetic, but it's such an important concept. That first person who decides to do something, to make something happen, to do something with his life, to live a life less ordinary, to steal that phrase. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about that. I think it's going to be my Thursday's show. I haven't announced it officially yet. I need to write some more notes, make sure I can do, a whole 20, 30-minute show on it. But I think that's going to be it. So I very much appreciate that from Petya. Outstanding. And I did do a show on Thursday. It was called, I Don't Know, which is a fun show title to do. It's funny, one of Yaron Brooks' YouTube channel members is called No One. So he's constantly saying, I've got a super chat from No One, and so, yeah, my show on Thursday was called I Don't Know, about the power of being willing to know what you know and know what you don't know. And the mastery and self-confidence that comes from being willing to express that. To be willing to say, not, and then come up with some answer to a question or some way to weigh in on a topic, even though you don't know, but being able to say, actually, I don't know. In that issue, I don't know. Or I don't know the answer to your question. Here's how you could get the answer, but I don't know. And especially when you're dealing with antagonists, to be able to say, I don't know. That's a power play. That's a power move. And if you're dealing with really squirrely people, you can say things like, I don't know, but neither do you, which can be a powerful move. A few others in the show. Watch it if you're interested in that. But last night at Great Lakes Objectivists,
yes,
Amy, you decided what our topic for the evening would be. Yes, Greg Lewis was there.
Yes.
And several of our favorite people were there. And yeah, you made it quote night.
Yes, I said bring your favorite quotes by Ayn Rand. Well, I said by Ayn Rand, but some people brought their favorite quotes by
I didn't
other
see the
folks,
by
but...
Ayn Rand part.
Oh, okay, maybe not. I don't know.
I guess that's why my favorite quotes were not Ayn Rand quotes.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Maybe...
I should I might have skimmed. Something I try not to do when I'm, for example, reading Frances Hodgson Burnett, but we all fall into it sometimes.
Kind of wonder now.
Oh, you're looking it up. Good. You will let me know. Did I get that entirely wrong? Because, the only objectivist quote I had was from Leonard
Peikoff. I
Peikoff.
said, let's bring our favorite Ayn Rand quotes for us to share and discuss.
Wow.
But that's okay. It's all right. We can review other...
Well, fortunately, I did not say that about this show. So, although I got it entirely wrong last night, I am not limited in that manner. So here's what I want. For those of you who are watching live, give me a quote. Give me one of your favorite quotes. Put it in the chat. would love to read your favorite quotes. If everyone gives us one, we could go for another 20 minutes. So, but yeah, bring them on. Because I wasn't the only one. Kayla, for example, one of the folks who joined us for dinner last night, brought several quotes. Let's see, she has a quote by Robin Williams. No matter what people tell you, words and ideas can change the world. Unquote, Robin Williams. I love that for several reasons, but one of them is, you remember on last week's show, the quote had been brought up online from Frank Zappa that, well, if music and lyrics had the power to change the world, since most songs are love songs, we'd all be in love, or something like that. And I made the point at the time, Frank Zappa, you're wrong, because love songs have saved the world. They have changed the world. The world would be much worse off. We would be in a hell of a state without love songs. That's my counter evidence to that, just like I think Ayn Rand has already saved the world several times over.
Many times over, yes.
If you think things are bad now, you have no idea what they would be like if it hadn't been for her.
Imagine if nobody had just the structure of rational egoism, and how that has affected psychology, and how that has given people the insight and the words to say, to talk about being good to oneself. Whether you want to call that self-love, or in Ayn Rand's case, rational selfishness, or however,
healthy self-assertion. Yes,
that kind of thing is ubiquitous in the culture right now, and if you look back culturally, or if I look back culturally, I'm like, how were people thinking in the 1960s? Were they trying to instill guilt in other people more than they do now? And I think it's true. I think back then, just in the last 50 years, people have stopped trying to manipulate others through guilt. Don't be so selfish. Do as I say, obey me, because that's not selfish somehow. That kind of thinking, that kind of manipulation, I just don't see as much. You can still find it. You can still find it out there, but I think a lot of people have more words. Just the simple idea that your life is your own to do with what you want, and no one can tell you what to do, and your life belongs to you. So, and when you say that, it's not some sort of shocking radical thing anymore. When you talk about self-love, it's not a shocking. Some people might want to say it is, but that falls flat nowadays, I find. Yep.
It's interesting because again, it is a World Suicide Prevention Day. I was looking at several different mental health resources, and it's amazing how much of the psychology community, although they would never say they embrace selfishness, they embrace self-assertion and self-development and self-confidence and living up to your own agreements with yourself. Selfishness is everywhere. Now, unfortunately, altruism is too, which is why the word selfish is tainted. And read a book like The Virtue of Selfishness if you want to see the antidote to that. But yes, I believe Ayn Rand has saved the world several times over. There's some argument going on, well, no, it's argument, some discussion going on in the chat about charity. Is charity a virtue?
Charity can be a part of justice.
Right. And benevolence.
I
wouldn't call charity a virtue. I would call it a value.
Yeah.
And like all values, it's contextual.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's...
but it's not a virtue.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking in terms of the Leonard Peikoff quote is the first duty of justice is to acknowledge and defend the good.
Right.
And, to help people out who you value. But that is part of valuing.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, though. Justice is the right word. Because giving to charity is putting your money where your mouth is, being willing to pay for what you want.
Yes.
Yeah, I want to see these people helped out of this situation. I don't want to walk down the street and see this homeless guy here when I know that it was through no fault of his own, and I'd like to help him get back on his feet. I'd like to give to this organization that does the kind of good work I would like to see done. I want to send money to the tsunami victims in the Indian Ocean because I read this story, it touched me, and I would like to know that I was a small part of making that situation better. That is, you're right. Yeah. It's justice. It's being willing to put your money where your mouth is, where your values are.
And on the even going further than that, it is a trade, because you can give money, which is something that you've earned through your own effort, through your own mental abilities, through your own focus as a conceptual human being, and so in a lot of ways, money in that sense is. You could say it does equate to a spiritual value that in turn, when you're giving that money to somebody who you value, who you are inspired by, that is a spiritual value as well. So it is kind of a spiritual trade in that sense.
Right. There's a lot of quotes about starting, about taking action. I quoted Mary Poppins earlier today. Once begun is half done.
I like that.
But Jim Ashley has a better version because this actually has content to it. He says, small mistakes at the beginning are multiplied later 1,000-fold. He says, source unknown. But we all know the expression, measure twice, cut once. So, yes, be very careful before you actually cut into the cloth that you have done it properly.
Yes.
Small mistakes at the beginning are multiplied later 1,000-fold. And don't let that paralyze you from taking action. The biggest mistake is to never start.
Yeah.
But I very much like that quote. That's very good.
It depends on what problem you're trying to solve or value you're trying to create. Depends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so, some of the quotes that I brought, again, the only specifically objectivist quote I brought was the one that you've already mentioned, which is the first duty of justice is to acknowledge and defend the good. And that will always be one of my favorites. I brought a couple of quotes from Richard Bach, the author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull and Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah.
All right.
And two of them I've mentioned on the show before. For example, the first one about your conscience. Your conscience is the measure of the honesty of your selfishness. Listen to it carefully.
So say that one more time, because it's parsed a little bit differently.
Right. Your conscience, that sense you have of your own moral status. Your conscience is the measure of the honesty of your selfishness. Listen to it carefully.
All right.
It's one of those ones I like so much I don't have to look it up. It was Richard Bach who originally wrote, if you love someone, set them free. If they return to you, they are yours. If they don't, they never were. I don't know. That one's a little woo, but maybe because I've heard it so many ways in so many different contexts. And
the Sting song.
I had to listen to Sting sing it over and over again. If you love someone,
free, set them free.
Yeah. Well, especially because that song emphasizes the free part of it. Like, they're probably not going to come back. But yes, it's reading these old stories about kept women and kept people, and that was such a thing, and in some ways it still is. Oh, the other Richard Bach quote that I like is, "Here's a test to find out if your mission on Earth is complete. If you're still alive, it isn't." And I like that one because our careers have these arcs. And, or some would say, this hill, and at some point you're over the hill, and it's all downhill from there. And no, your mission on Earth, Well, I would say, in my own terms, your mission on earth is to live a life that is an end unto itself, a life worth living, a life that you can look at in any given moment and say, I am glad to be here, glad to be alive, glad for the people in my life, glad for the things I am doing. And yes, on the day when I say, this is probably my last day on earth, I want to know that, yes, that was a life worth living. So yeah, a test to find out if your mission on earth is complete. If you're still alive, it isn't. Love that. Ah, yes.
Yep.
So Amy, what quotes did you bring to quote night?
It was a little bit of a different context last night, since, I think in this audience too, it's the same thing, but last night, was our Great Lakes Objectivists meeting, and, we invite people who, most of the time, they are quite familiar with Ayn Rand, and so when you talk about Ayn Rand, you talk about her ideas, you're talking about her intellectual achievement, you're talking about her insights, her perspectives that really have helped you, that have really impacted your life.
There is a context there.
Yeah,
shared values.
I could count on everybody to understand and to feel visible about my admiration for these quotes, which is amazing. So, which is, one of the main selfish reasons I run a philosophy group. So, there are a lot of Ayn Rand quotes. I'll just start with the first one that I like. This is, and I'm forgetting now, I should have looked it up, but this was, I think, kind of an internal dialogue in Atlas Shrugged, and I think it was from Dagny. But the quote is, I often kind of tweak it a little bit, but the actual quote is, "The sight of an achievement was the greatest gift a human being could offer to others." I usually paraphrase and say, the sight of an achievement is the greatest gift one person can give to another. Same basic meaning. And yeah, because, we kind of parsed it out last night. And I said, think about, what is a gift? What is a gift? Most people think, a gift is something that you give at Christmas or whatever, a scarf or a toy or a whatever it is, gift card. And you give, and there's meanings to that, of course. There is rational value, and can be, the meanings in those sorts of things can be, very valuable and insightful and meaningful and deep. But giving of money, like to a charity, or giving of things, that is certainly a value. Of course, as we all know, or most of us in the audience today know, it doesn't mean a lot if you just throw money at it. If you want to actually have something, make sure everyone is no longer hungry, let's throw money at it. That doesn't necessarily work, because human beings have this capacity and have this nature about them to use their reason, to use their creativity, to innovate, to figure out ways in which to feed themselves. Whether that's, working with others to trade with them for money, whether that's coming up with their own business plan, or even tending to their own garden, or their own farm, or however. So in solving that problem, you're dealing with a human mind. You're dealing with the nature of the human mind, and when you offer that sight of an achievement to somebody else, that is the greatest gift, because that person can then say, if this person can do it, I can do it. If this person can get themselves out of the hole, if they were also down on their luck, or however, or in a bad situation, or living in a bad way, and I see them getting through that and overcoming those obstacles, I can too. And, of course, it applies to all sorts of different contexts in terms of, just day-to-day living. But, yeah, the sight of achievement is the greatest gift because those are points of inspiration that people can lean on and can take strength in to get the values that they are seeking in life. And, so I thought about that more and more, and I thought, it's really, really amazing. Not only that we're rational animals and we're organic and we have senses that are valid and that we're living on a fairly hospitable planet, but that we can actually be visible and provide visibility and encouragement to other people around us who we value. I think it's a pretty damn good deal.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, don't show me your sword, show me your ability.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting in the chat, Greg Lewis mentions a chained woman, a kept woman perhaps, bracelet reference between Dagny and Lillian. Well, of course, having access to the Ayn Rand Studies CD. Man, I wish they still released these. It's easy to look up an Atlas Shrugged. This is Lillian meeting Dagny Taggart at a fancy event.
Yes.
She's not used to seeing Dagny Taggart dressed up. This is the woman who runs a railroad. She's always in business suits. Seeing her in the suit she wore, one never thought of Dagny Taggart's body. The black dress seemed excessively revealing because it was astonishing to discover that the lines of her shoulder were fragile and beautiful, and that the diamond band on the wrist of her naked arm gave her the most feminine of all aspects, the look of being chained. Now, we've done whole episodes on masculinity and femininity and why the look of being chained might be the most feminine of all aspects, but that is a whole nother conversation to have.
Yeah, that's a very specific and involved and nuanced context. Yes.
And, if that's not enough of a chain, you jump forward a couple of pages and Dagny Taggart is being driven crazy by the insanity of what's being spoken, the horrible things that are being spoken at this event. And at some point she sees Lillian Reardon, who is just a horrible creature, is wearing on her wrist not a diamond bracelet, but this heavy blue-green metal chain, and it's literally a chain. It's like a bracelet made of the first pour of the first heat of Reardon metal, this new metal her husband had invented. And she's complaining about it, like, it's the same stuff that they're going to make plumbing pipes out of. And, Dagny Taggart goes up, and she had heard, she was looking at the bracelet of blue-green metal. She felt the movement of something being torn off of her wrist. This is something she's doing herself. And she heard her own voice saying in the great stillness, very calmly, a voice cold as a skeleton, naked of emotion, "If you are not the coward that I think you are, you will exchange it." Again, the diamond bracelet that she was wearing. It's a great scene. If you know the scene, you love it. If you don't know the scene, it's time for you to read Atlas Shrugged.
Yes.
But thank you for reminding us about that, Greg. That is a great sequence in the book. I had a couple of quotes when we talked about time that I've got to mention. They're very short. Seneca said, life if well lived is long enough. Okay, that's Seneca going back to the Stoics. And then we jumped forward to Mae West in the early 1900s, who said, you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough.
Very nice.
I like the modern version of that.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the other quotes about time that really stuck with me there, those of you who have books on your nightstand and still go to the bookstore and buy new ones, even though you haven't gotten into those first ones, will appreciate this one. Warren Zevon, the great musician Warren Zevon, said, "We love to buy books because we believe we're buying the time to read them."
Yeah.
I heard that, like, ouch, oh, that hit me in the chest. We love to buy books because we believe we're buying the time to read them. Fortunately, we have audiobooks and Librivox and all of these other ways to take in literature. Although I still don't feel like hearing a book is the same as reading a book. But I'm old, so you can ignore all of that.
The differences are...
It's strange when somebody says to me, oh, yeah, I read The Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
Oh, you must have found some time to sit down. Well, no, I listened to it online at 1.5 speed, and like, okay, that's great, but to me, that's not reading a book.
Well, that's more like skimming a book is what that
is. It's
is.
a way to take it in. And to be honest, there are books like that I should have and haven't read, so I admire anybody who says, oh, yeah, I got to catch up on all those classics that I never read in college or never read when I was young, and now I'm too busy for. I'm all about audiobooks. It's just not quite the same thing to me.
For a lot of really meaningful and intelligent literature out there, I think it's good to read it first as a book, and then you can go back and listen to it on Audible over and over, which is great.
Yeah. Again, I love Audible. I love LibriVox. I love audiobooks. I don't mean to put any shade on any of them. Yeah,
so I've got one more quote here. It's not from Ayn Rand. It's actually from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry.
Ooh, Little Prince.
Yeah, he wrote The Little Prince. He wrote a number of books about his, basically fiction books. But he referenced basically flying, being a pilot. He referenced being a pilot in The Little Prince, as a matter of fact, too. But yeah, I've always found him to be very, very interesting, and his whole life was very interesting and very inspiring. And he has a really nice quote here. Love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. And that's, I think that kind of, describes the idea of shared values between people. It could be romantic love in that way. It could be friendship in that way. And that kind of goes in with Ayn Rand's description of love. Love is the expression of one's values, the greatest reward you can earn for the moral qualities you have achieved in your character and person. The emotional price paid for by one man for the joy he receives from the virtues of another.
Right.
And, so that goes a little step further. It's not just values or looking outward together in the same direction, I guess, in that way. I suppose you could put virtues in that category of the looking out in the same direction, having the same approach to life, perhaps. But yes, having the moral qualities and achieving those moral qualities are something you achieve, are something that you actually work and take action to gain, which is amazing. The emotional price paid by one man for the joy he receives from the virtues of another. Not just the values of another, but the virtues of how somebody actually approaches life, how they think. And in Ayn Rand's formulations of virtues, when she's, in Galt's speech, especially when she's having John Galt go down the descriptions of the 7 virtues, so fantastic, and the virtues basically being based in the faculty of reason and rationality, in our very nature, which is really fantastic. But yes, you do need to do the work and achieve those virtues of character.
All right. Well, we should wrap up, but I want to give one more quote that's not an Ayn Rand quote, but then I'll relate it to Ayn Rand. Robert Heinlein. Mm-hmm. Robert Heinlein said about love, this is not a definition, but it's an observation. Love is that condition in which the happiness of another person is essential to your own. And happily, I've had that kind of love in my life where I can't be happy if the person I care about is unhappy. And the interesting thing, one of the interesting observations I've made about that is in the book, The Fountainhead, by that test, by that measure, who does Peter Keating love? Whose happiness deeply matters to Keating? Who is it where if this person is not happy, he can't be happy? And we all know that he's kind of loves Catherine Halsey. He says several times, and in some ways he means it, that he loves Howard Rourke. But who matters to Peter Keating? Katie Halsey's happiness doesn't matter to Peter Keating. He loves her in a very elementary, almost a grade school way. Howard Rourke's happiness ultimately doesn't matter to Keating. He betrays him repeatedly and feels no remorse over it.
Yeah.
No real guilt. No, Keating doesn't love anyone. Now, Howard Rourke, the arch-individualist who can walk down the street naked and not give a care about what anybody thinks of him, who can be the most cold person in the book, who does he love?
So many.
Many.
But mainly himself. Mainly his own values,
yes,
his own life.
But who else?
Oh, well, Dominique, Austin Heller, Stephen Mallory, Mike. He loves them all.
Sean Xavier Donegan. Yes, this is a man of passion. And you're right. It flows from the fact that he loves himself. And Peter Keating doesn't love himself either. So, yes. With that said, yes, thank you for sharing a few quotes and especially your other thoughts in the chat. I do appreciate that. If I've missed any, I always go back and read them later. Thank you for joining us. Again, Quote Night at Glow was great fun. Couldn't resist having a bit of that fun with you all tonight. I do have a Post-it note of the week. I'm reading a book, and in this case, by reading, I do mean I'm listening to a book on Audible. I think I might go down to the library and pick up the print edition because, again, I like listening to a book and being able to follow the text. But I'm reading a book called Unreasonable Hospitality. And it's by a restaurateur, a great restaurateur. He's running a great restaurant. Had a hard time getting into the list of top restaurants. He's like, what am I doing wrong? And he learns there's a difference between service and hospitality. It's a great book, at least so far. I'm only a couple chapters in. But the lesson that I'm taking from it is, and here's my Post-it note for the week, be unreasonable. Now that's an exaggeration because as an objectivist, just as a reasonable person, I believe that rationality is, as Amy pointed out, it's fundamental. If there's a list of 7 virtues, rationality is the first one, and reason is essentially the explanation for all 7 of those virtues. No, when I say be unreasonable, I mean in the sense of the book that I'm reading. We have reasonable ideas about what service is or should be. We have reasonable ideas about what we can and should accomplish. We have reasonable ideas about which of our values are actually attainable and which of them are probably pipe dreams. And yet, and one of my favorite quotes, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, the vast majority of our limitations are self-imposed. And we are each capable of far, far more than we believe. So I don't know, I'm going to try being unreasonable for a while. I'm going to try standing on the table again. I'm going to try not being irrational, but being a little more outrageous. Push those boundaries. Get out of your comfort zone.
Yes. Put imagine yourself in a completely different context, and put yourself in a vulnerable situation that way.
Yeah. Do the crazy stuff. Not the self-destructive, not the self. Just push your boundaries. That's what I'm going to do. That's my Post-it note for the week. If you have a Post-it note pad handy, you might write "Be unreasonable" on a Post-it note. Put it up somewhere where you will see it each day this week, and maybe it'll push you into doing something you might not have done, but that you will be glad for having done.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us. Amy, thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Robert. Thank you for joining me. And you all of you out there, thank you for joining me and Robert.
Thank you for joining our unreasonable show. Can you be simultaneously reasonable and unreasonable? It sounds like A and non-A, but it's really
if you
two
define
different contexts.
Unreasonable in terms of be bold, be daring,
It would not be unreasonable for you to share your ideas for what else we should be talking about on this show, what other kinds of episodes we should be doing in the chat or in the 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir Facebook group. It would not be unreasonable for you to go to robertnasir.com, click the PayPal or Patreon links, and support the show. It is not unreasonable. In fact, it is generous and always wonderful that some of you already do. And we give you some of this. Our hearts are glad for you doing that thing.
We're very grateful.
So thank you.
Yes. And one last thing from Jim. If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. That's another quote.
I like it. I've heard it, and I don't know who it's from either, but I love it. If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. You know, in the United States, we have the expression, big, hairy goals. I forget who said that, but you should have big, hairy goals. I don't know. It's not my favorite phrase, but it makes the point. I like the word audacious more than hairy. But
Hairy.
you do you. But yes, thank you for that, Jim. Folks, thank you for joining us. As always, we're going to leave you wishing you every success that you so richly deserve. I know that you deserve every success. It's why you're here. People who don't deserve the success don't listen to this kind of stuff. Thank you. We wish you every success, every happiness, and as always, and in a big way right from here, we wish you love.